Welcome to the Masterclass course. So, if you have been searching for a course that will give you everything you need to achieve certification, to sustain the culture of excellence, and to excel in your field as an auditor or as a quality professional or as a food safety professional, or just to understand how to apply all these standards, you are in the right place. This is going to be a complete course that will give you everything you need around the world, anywhere you are in the world, to achieve the certification and sustain the culture of excellence. So save it in your playlist and just skip to the part where you need, whether you want to implement ISO 9001, you can just watch ISO 9001 and you will have everything you need, including the checklist to implement. And you can do the same with other standards all the way to FSSC 22000 and version 6. So this is the implementation and audit guide, and it will transform your organization with the world-class management system. We have 5 standards with the comprehensive clause-by-clause coverage of ISO 9001 2015, ISO 45001 2018, ISO 14001 2015, ISO 22000 2018, and FSSC 22000 version 6.0 with every subclause requirement. And you will have 100% readiness for audit by the time you complete this course. You will have all the complete documentation requirements and record retention periods and audit evidence you need for certification success. And as I said, this is applicable globally. So with the universal application, this course is applicable to food processing plants, ingredients manufacturing, co-packer, pack houses, dairies, mills, and beverage plants worldwide. So wherever you are, this is your course. And specifically for these sectors. Other sectors we will cover in other courses in our YouTube channel. Check them out in QHC 360 Global on YouTube, and you will find other courses. Now, this master class again is going to provide you with everything you need to implement management system, to conduct audit, and to achieve certifications. So whether you are a quality professional seeking certification, an auditor learning to conduct systematic audits, or an organization implementing the system from zero, this is your complete reference guide. Now let's start with all the standards that are applicable as I named them earlier. And again, this is specific for food and ingredient manufacturing organization for how to implement ISO 9001, ISO 14001, 45001, 22000, and FSSC 22000. So who this course is for? This course is for quality professional seeking certification in ISO 9001 2015, ISO 45001 2018, ISO 14001 2015, ISO 22000 2018, or FSSC 22000 version 6.0. And this course is also for auditors learning to conduct clause by clause audits of management systems in food manufacturing. And this course also is for food and ingredient manufacturing organizations implementing systems for certification, including processing plants, ingredient manufacturers, co-packers, pack houses, dairies, mills, and beverage plants. we have included a real world implementation examples like real company. So this masterclass goes beyond just theory. You will find detail that you can copy paste implementation scenarios throughout the course and showing exactly how a food manufacturing company, here the example of a company we have is Universal Harvest Food Limited, uh, and you will successfully implement each standard because we are going to do that. You can just copy the same and put your details and you are good to go. All right, with the example also of timeline reflecting from February 2026, the time we are recording this video. And these scenarios will include first actual document example with document numbers and version control that you can copy paste, and also workshop meeting details with participation names and roles and realistic dates for 2026 that also you can replicate. And also those examples include specific measurements and timelines. For example, Q1 2026, Q2 2026, and also the budget's needs. And those also you can model and just tailor it to your organization. Those examples also include complete audit evidence list that you need pass your audit. And also it includes workers' consultation records that you can practice the same in your organization. And these examples also include audit outcome and auditor comments that you will see when you finish doing your audit and achieving your certification, and also with certification reflecting from 2026 to 2029 timeline frame. And I'm assuming that you might be implementing in 2026. So the life cycle of the certificate, which is 3 years, we are also replicating the same. So you have everything you need and you don't need to worry anymore. You have found all the resources to succeed. And these examples are designed so that you can adapt them directly to your organization. All right. Simply change the company name, the product, and the specific details to match your operations and your country and your regulations. Now, I have to start with a disclaimer here that also you need to know. The recording date we are recording this is recorded on February 2026. So the standards and regulations and requirements by the time you are watching this video may have been updated since this recording. So always verify you are working with the most current version of all the standards that we are covering. All right. And also your certification body's specific requirement. You need to check that. And also you need to check with your industry specific technical specifications and prerequisite programs. Another disclaimer is for the regional compliance, the food safety and quality regulations vary significantly by country and by region. So this course is providing general guidelines based on international standards. For that reason, you must consult your local regulatory authority for country-specific requirements, and you must verify compliance with national food safety laws and regulations in your country, and you must check regional certification body requirements that are applicable to you, and then you must ensure alignment with your local occupational health and safety and environment legislation. The final disclaimer is for professional guidance. This masterclass is educational in nature. So for implementation and certification, this will show you everything you need, of course, but also you might need to engage with qualified consultant familiar with your specific industry and local and location, or you can contact us at qhsc360.org, or you will find the details on our YouTube channel if you need help. And also, you can work with your accredited certification bodies. We are not accredited certification body. You can work with, search the one that can work with you, and also always seek legal and regulatory advice as you need for your jurisdiction. So this is this disclaimer. With that being said, let's have an overview of what you will learn in the course. The course objectives: first, you will learn clause by clause implementation, and you will understand every clause and subclause requirement of ISO 9001 2015, ISO 45001 2018, and ISO 14001 2015, and ISO 22000 2018, and FSSC 22000 version 6.0. You will understand every clause and subclause of all these standards with a specific application, food manufacturing contexts, all right? With a specific application to food manufacturing contexts. Then also you will learn the document and record requirements. You will know exactly what documents to create, what records to maintain, and the retention period required for compliance and audit readiness. Also, you will learn audit evidence preparation. You will learn what auditors look for at each clause during stage 1 and stage 2 audits, and how to prepare objective evidence. Also, you will learn implementation roadmap. You will learn to follow up step-by-step implementation guide. All right, you will follow a step-by-step implementation guidance that can be copied and applied directly in any food manufacturing organization worldwide. And also, you will learn audit methodology. You will learn to conduct systematic audits using clause-based checklist and evidence triangulation and non-conformity classification. Also, you will learn certification success, and you will achieve first-time certification by understanding common pitfalls, auditors' expectations, and excellence signals. And finally, you will also learn the real world implementation from real examples, and you can just copy paste ready scenarios from uh, Universal Harvest Food Limited. It was early we named it Golden, but then because we are using fictional but realistic company, we name it Universal Harvest Food Limited, showing exactly how to implement each requirement with actual documents, actual processes, and actual audit evidence. All right. I have some noise in the background. Kids are playing, so I hope that noise is cancelled by the mic I'm using, and I hope you can hear me clearly. Now, let's have an overview on the course structure after you have seen all the things you can learn. First, how this master class is organized. This course is structured as a complete implementation and audit reference guide. So like I said in the beginning, everything you need is here. And each standard is presented on its own dedicated sections with full clause by clause breakdown. So if you are not implemented all the clauses, you can just pick up each clause you need. Now, what makes this course unique? Throughout the course, you will find detailed real-world implementation examples for Universal Harvest Food Limited, a fictional but realistic bakery ingredient manufacturer. And these scenarios show exactly what documents to create, what processes to implement, and what evidence auditors expect to see. And these examples are designed to be copied and pasted, so they are ready. Okay? If you cannot take notes as fast as I'm speaking with all the checklists I'm showing, you can leave the comment below and I will send you those documents so that you can use them as your reference guide. But again, you can use the video also as your reference guide. All right. Those are ready to paste and you can adapt them directly to your own organization by simply changing names, products, and specific details. And each scenario includes actual document numbers and meeting dates and participant names, exactly the way you need to do them, and specific measurements and audit outcomes to give you a complete picture of successful implementation. So we will move from introduction to ISO 9001, to ISO 45001, ISO 14001, to ISO 22000, and to FSSC 22000. And each clause section includes requirement explanation, mandatory documents, required record with retention period, audit evidence checklist, and implementation step, and also common pitfalls in food manufacturing that you can avoid. Now, let's have a quick look at the terms and definition glossary for those who are not familiar with those terms. Those are essential terminology for ISO standards and food safety management system. All right, so now we will start with the management system terms. You have documented information means information that are required to be controlled and maintained, including both documents and records. Example, you have SOP for equipment operations and records of calibration check and meeting minutes from a management review. All these are called, in management terms, they are called documented information. For a nonconformity, it means that non-fulfillment of a requirement. It can be a major nonconformity like system breakdown or a minor nonconformity like isolated lapse. An example, you have product found with undeclared allergens. That's a major nonconformity. And you have missing signature on a batch records that will be considered a minor nonconformity, and failure to follow a critical sanitation procedures. Also, it's considered nonconformity. And then you have corrective action, which means action to eliminate the cause of nonconformity and prevent recurrence. Example for corrective actions, you have, for example, retraining staff on allergen control or updating a batch record template to ensure signatures or repairing a faulty piece of equipment that led to product contamination. All of these are called corrective actions. And then we have preventive action, which is removed from ISO 9001 2015 standards and now is covered by risk-based thinking. And then we have objective evidence. Objective evidence means data supporting the existence or truth or something, including documents, records, observations, or interviews. Example for objective evidence, you have signed production log or auditor's observation of GMP compliance or interview with operator confirming training completion. Those are all called objective evidence. Another term in management system is competence. In our context, competence means the ability to apply knowledge and skill to achieve intended results. Example of competence here, you have a food safety manager with relevant certification, or production operator successfully performing equipment maintenance, or QC technician accurately conducting lab tests. All these are called competence. Then you will hear a lot about the top management. In this context, top management means person or group of people who directs and control an organization at the highest level. Example, you have CEO approving the food safety policy, or board of director allocating budget for quality initiatives, or plant manager leading the management review. All these are called top management. And then you have interested party term, management term. It means party means person or organizations that can be affected by, or perceive itself to be affected by a decision or activity. Those are the interested parties. For example, customers, regulatory bodies, or employees and suppliers. All are considered interested parties. Those are management terms. For food safety terms, you have HACCP, HACCP. It means Hazard Analysis and Critical Control Point, which is a systematic approach to food safety. Example, you have identifying biological hazards in raw ingredients, or setting cooking temperature as a CCPs, or monitoring pH level in fermented products. All these examples are part of HACCP, or Hazard Analysis and Critical Control Point. The other term in food safety is CCP. CCP means Critical Control Point, which is a step at which control can be applied and is essential to prevent or eliminate a food safety hazard or reduce it to an acceptable level. Example of CCP have pasteurization of milk, or metal detector in finished goods, or cooking time and temperature for poultry. Those are considered CCP. And then you have critical limits. Critical limits in our context, it means a measurable value that separates acceptability from unacceptability at a CCP. Example for critical limits, you have a minimum cooking temperature of 74 degrees Celsius for 15 seconds, or a metal detector sensitivity set to 1.5 millimeter ferrous, or pH not exceeding 4.6 for acidified products. Those are all considered critical limits. In food safety term, also you will hear about PRP. PRP in our context of food safety means prerequisite programs, which are basic conditions and activities necessary to maintain a hygienic environment throughout food safety chain or food chain. Example for PRP, you have pest control program, or facility cleaning and sanitation, or employees hygiene practices. All these things are called PRP, and mainly, we have around 10 essential PRPs. Now, for OPRP is something also you will hear about. OPRP, you just add O to the PRP, which will become operational prerequisite programs. Operational prerequisite program are Prerequisite programs identified by hazard analysis as essential to control likelihood of introducing food safety hazard or contamination. Example, you have control of potential allergen cross-contamination or ensuring correct chemicals concentration in CIP or clean in place or managing air filtration in high care area. All these are called OPRP or operational prerequisite programs. And in food safety, you will hear about validation. Validation in food safety context means obtaining evidence that control measures are capable of being effective. Example for validation, you have scientific study demonstrating a new cooking process eliminates pathogens, and we will conduct that today. Secondly, the second example for validation, you have challenge tests confirming sanitizer efficacy. And third example for validation, you have expert opinion supporting a new cleaning procedure. So those are examples of validation in food safety. So when you hear about the validation, this is what they mean in food safety. Also, you will hear about verification. Verification here in food safety term, it means confirming through provision of objective evidence that the specified requirements have been fulfilled. Example of validation, you have internal audit or pathogen testing of finished products or calibration records of monitoring equipment. All are considered types of verifications. And then you have traceability. In food safety, it means the ability to follow the movement of a product through a specified stage of product, processing, and distribution. And examples for traceability, you have tracking lot numbers from raw material to finished product or maintaining records of ingredients suppliers or identifying destination of all distributed product batches. All these are examples of traceability. Then you will hear about TACCP or TACCP, which means it's threat assessment critical control point in food safety, and it is a systematic approach to food defense. Example of TACCP, you have securing access points to facility is one example, or background check for employees, or surveillance cameras in sensitive areas. All these are examples of TACCP or TACCP. And then another term in food safety, you have FACCP or VACCP. In this context, it means the vulnerability assessment critical control point, which is a systematic approach to food fraud mitigation. And for example of TACCP or TACCP, you have vetting ingredient suppliers for authenticity or testing high risk ingredients for adulteration or monitoring global food fraud database. All these are examples of TACCP or TACCP. Those are food safety terms. Now let's move to audit terms. In audit terms, you have a stage one audit. A stage one audit, it means is then on a stage where document review of auditing happen to verify system readiness for stage two. So in stage one, it's all about document reviews, although some auditors will prefer sometimes to take a quick walk in the organization just to understand the context. Example of a stage one audit, but essentially a stage one audit is for document review audit to verify the system readiness for stage two. Example, you will have reviewing the food safety manual or checking availability of key procedures and policies, or ensuring HACCP plan is complete. All these examples are part of stage one audit. And then you have a stage two audit is when the implementation audit happened to verify the system is effectively implemented. That is stage two. An example of a stage two audit, you have observing production line practices in real time or interviewing staff on allergen control procedures or reviewing records from recent shifts. All these examples are part of a stage two audit. Then you have surveillance audits. Surveillance audit means annual audit that is conducting during a 3-year certification cycle. So every year, every 12 months, the surveillance audit happen to verify system is maintained. An example for surveillance audit, you have checking if the conduct checking if management review are held regularly or reviewing recent internal audit reports or verifying ongoing current corrective actions. Those are examples of the activities that are carried out during the surveillance audit. Then you have recertification audit. Recertification audit is a full audit at the end of 3-year cycle. For example, if the audit is start in 2026, the surveillance audit will be 2029 to review the certification. An example of the activities that happen during the recertification, you have comprehensive review of the entire management system or similar scope to a stage 2 audit for renewal or assessing overall continuous improvement over 3 years. All these can be done during the recertification audit. And then you will hear about audit criteria. Audit criteria means the set of requirements used as a reference against which objective evidence is compared. Example of audit criteria, you have audit criteria for ISO 22000 standards or audit criteria from company's own food safety manual or audit criteria from customer specification requirement. Those are all called audit criteria. Could be internal audit or external audit. And also, you will hear about audit evidence. Audit evidence include records, a statement of facts, or other information relevant and verifiable. Those are all used as audit evidence. Example, you have completed temperature log is an evidence, audit evidence, and employee training records can be used also for audit evidence, or photographs of facility conditions also can be used as audit evidence. And then you have audit findings. It means those are the results of evaluation of collected audit evidence against audit criteria. Example, you have major nonconformity. Uh, if there is no documented HACCP plan, this is an audit finding. Or it could be stated minor nonconformity, incomplete calibration records observed in January 2026. This also audit findings. Or observation, improved sanitation note in packing area in February 2026. That's also an audit finding. And then you have audit conclusion. Audit conclusion is the outcome of an audit after consideration of audit objectives and all audit findings. Example, you have recommendation for certification issued February 2025 or 2026, or certification deferred pending closure of major NC, or system deemed ineffective and maintained. Those are all examples of audit conclusions. Now, let's look at quality terms. quality and safety terms. You have conformity. It means fulfillment of requirements. An example of conformity, product meeting its specification, or employees following a safety procedure, or process operating within defined parameters. Those are all examples of conformity. Quality, in the context of quality and food safety, it means a degree to which a set of inherent characteristics fulfills requirements. Example, you have a snack bar testing consistently good, or packaging preventing product damage, or a product reliably meeting nutritional claims. Those are all examples of quality. Then you will hear about risk in the context of food, of quality and, and safety terms. Risk means effect of uncertainty on expected results. It can be positive and it can be negative. Example, you have risk of equipment breakdown causing production delay, or risk of allergen cross-contamination, or risk of new market entry failure. All these are type of risks. Then you will hear about opportunity in quality and safety term. In this context, opportunity means favorable circumstances to achieve unintended results. Example, you have implementation new technology to improve efficiency, or expanding into new product line, or training staff for enhanced skill set. All these are examples of opportunities. Then you will hear about the process in quality and safety context. It means process means set of interrelated or interacting activities that use inputs to deliver intended results. Example, you have the baking process for bread, or the customer complaints handling process, or the equipment maintenance process. Those are all type of processes. And then you will hear about the procedure. Procedure in quality and safety term means specified way to carry out an activity or process. Example of procedure, you have documented sanitation procedure for mixer, or a recall procedure for finished products, or a procedure for conducting internal audit. Those are all type of procedures. Then you will hear about work instructions. In quality and safety term, it means detailed description of how to perform a specific task. That's the work instruction, a detailed description of how to perform a specific task. Example, you have a step-by-step guide for operating a specific piece of equipment. That's work instruction. Or visual instructions for packaging a product. That's also work instruction. And a guide for preparing a specific chemical solution. That's also work instruction. And then you will hear about monitoring in quality and food safety term. Monitoring means determining the status of a system, process, or activity. All right, determining the status of a system, process, or activity. That's the definition of monitoring in quality and food safety, or quality and safety term. An example, you have continuous temperature recording to a cold storage unit. That's monitoring. Or observing hand washing practices at regular intervals is also type of monitoring. Or tracking the number of customer complaints daily, that's also another type of monitoring. Then you will hear about the measurement. In quality and safety term, measurement means process to determine a value. For example, you have weighing ingredients for a recipe is a measurement, or Using a thermometer to check product core temperature is another type of measurement, or a laboratory analysis of microbial counts is also another type of measurement. And then you will hear about continual improvement. In this context of quality and safety, continuous improvement means recurring activity to enhance performance. For example, you have implementing change based on audit findings, or optimizing a production line for reduced waste in Q1 2026, or updating procedures to incorporate best practices. Those are all examples of continuous improvement in quality and safety terms. And then you will hear about effectiveness. In this context of quality and safety term, effectiveness means extent to which planned activities are realized and planned results achieved. Example, you will have training program reducing employees' errors, or pest control program eliminating pest sightings, for example, as of January this year, or a recall procedure successfully removing affected products from market. Those are all different type of effectiveness. And then you will hear about efficiency in quality and safety term. Efficiency means relationship between results achieved and resources used. Example, you will have a new process reducing energy new process reducing energy consumption while maintaining output, or a revised workflow speeding up production time, or automated data collections to save labor hours. Those are all type of efficiency. Those are the terms that you will hear throughout the course and you will find throughout the standards. Now, here is a quick reference for the acronyms that also we will be using. QMS means Quality Management System. FSMS means Food Safety Management System. OH&S means Occupational Health and Safety. EMS means Environmental Management System. HL means high level HLS means high level structure. GFSI means Global Food Safety Initiative. CB means certification body. NC means nonconformity. CA means corrective action. MR means management review. IA means internal audit. And KPI means key performance indicators. All right. Now, let's have a quick look of the integration benefit of why we need to integrate all the standards that we are going to cover. Why do we need to implement ISO 9001, 45001, 14001, 22000, and FSSC together? What are the benefits? Well, all five standards share the same high-level structure, making integration natural and efficient. So rather than maintaining separate systems, food manufacturers can create one integrated management system that addresses quality, safety, environment, and food safety simultaneously. And this is practically relevant as February 2026, ensuring systems are current and robust. And I have worked with some organizations who have implemented all these standards, and they have been leaders in the market for many years. Those are the benefits, some of the benefits. It reduces the duplication, so it eliminates redundant processes across the standards, and you can have single audit, consolidates audits into one efficient review, and you will have unified documentation, which will harmonize records and procedures for clarity, and also shared resources. You will optimize personnel, and tools across systems. An integrated management system streamlines processes, reduces redundancy, and fosters a more cohesive organizational approach to compliance and performance. The goal is to achieve certification effectively with audit cycle typically running from, let's say, from 2026 to 2029. The key benefits you will achieve: the operational benefits, you have single set of policies and objectives, one management review covering all the standards, integrated internal audit program, unified corrective action system, shared documents and record control, combined risk assessment process, single training program for common requirements, reduce administrative burden, and consistent approach across organization. Those are the operational benefit for integrating the for implementing the integrated system. And for business benefit, the first benefit is cost saving by around 30 to 40% versus the separate systems if you implement them separately. And also it you will have faster implementation timeline. For example, if you are aiming for Q4 this year, you can complete if you implement all together. And also the other benefit, business benefit, is enhanced customer confidence. I've seen a lot of organizations with all the standards mentioned that have way benefits above those who have some of them. The other business benefit, those are GFSI recognized also, like FSSC 2000 version 6, and also the improved operational efficiency and better resources utilization, a stronger organizational culture, and reduce audit fatigue. So your team don't have to go over separate audits all over again. Also taking time, like we said earlier, time saving, audit fatigue reduction. So from an average of 4 to 6 audits to 1 to 2 per year. You don't need, repetitive audits all over the year. You just need 1 or 2 audits and you are good. And then you will have holistic approach to compliance. The integration success factors include: you have common elements, you can leverage the shared requirements like the context analysis, interested parties, leadership commitment, competence, communication, document control, internal audits, management review, corrective actions, all updated for current best practices as February 2026. So you can just combine all and leverage that. And also, the other success factor is the specific requirements. You can maintain standard specific elements like HACCP for food safety and hazard identification for OH&S and environmental aspects for EMS while using common processes. So you will ensure compliance with FSSC 22000 version 6.0 requirements. Other success factor is single team approach. You can establish cross-functional teams that understand all standards and avoiding silos and ensuring consistent implementation across quality, safety, environment, and food safety by February 2026. All right, now let's start with the quality standard with ISO 9001 2015 quality management system. Let's start with the first standard. The complete implementation for ISO 9001 2015 quality management system for food and ingredient manufacturing. For a standard overview, quality 9001 2015 established requirement for a quality management system when an organization needs to demonstrate its ability to consistently provide products that meet customer and applicable statutory and regulatory requirements. For food manufacturers, this means demonstrating controls over raw material receiving and storage, control over production processes and changeovers, and control over product specifications and customer requirements, and control over equipment calibration and maintenance, and control over non-conforming product controls, and control over customer complaints handling, and also you are demonstrating control over continuous improvement. The high-level structure, ISO 9001, follows the same common management system structure. Class 4, context of the organization. Class 5, leadership. Class 6, planning. Class 7, support. Class 8, operations. Class 9, performance evaluation. Class 10, improvement. And this structure align with ISO 45001 2018, ISO 14001 2015, and ISO 22000 2018, enabling integrated management system. So all these high-level clauses are the same with all the other standards, and you don't need to create separate documents, which I will show you later. There are many here you can put together and implement, integrate, and save time and the resources, and also avoid audit fatigue. Now, first, let's start with class 4.1, understanding the context of organization. Here, in subclass 4.1, the requirement you need to determine external and internal issues relevant to purpose and strategic direction that affect ability to achieve intended QMS outcome. Mandatory requirements, the documentation you need here, you need context analysis document, like a SWOT analysis, pistol analysis, or similar. And you need context review records, and you need to review it annually or when significant change happen, and the retention period is 3 years. The evidence that you need to present during the audit, you need to prove that documented analysis showing market trends, regulatory change, customer expectations, competitor actions, technology change, internal capabilities, and resources constraint. And also, you need to show evidence that management review of the context has happened. And also, you need to show the evidence of linking between the context and QMS scope, objectives, and risk. And don't worry, we are going to do it together. Exactly how you can do this. The implementation step for food manufacturing to meet the requirement of class 4.1. First, you need to conduct a stakeholders workshop with senior management, production, quality, and commercial team. So you need to schedule that. Then you need to identify in this workshop the external issues like customer specifications, change, regulatory inspections, supply chain disruptions, market consolidation, and retail requirements. Also, in this workshop, you need to After you have identified the external issues, you need to identify the internal issues, including production capacity, equipment age, workforce skills, quality culture, financial constraints. So you are doing identification through the analysis. And then you need to document uh, all that in the context analysis with date and participants. And then you need to review during the management review meetings, which at least at the minimum should happen annually once, but is recommended for quarterly review. And you need to update when major change occur, like new customer, when you acquire a new customer, or when you add a new line in your production, or when regulations change or new updates from regulations. That's when you need to update your context analysis document. The common pitfalls to avoid here in implementation of context analysis: having generic context that is copied from template without site-specific analysis is a common pitfall you can avoid. And when you don't have evidence of how context influence QMS decisions, so you need to link it to the QMS. And also you can avoid the pitfall of context when it's not reviewed or updated regularly, when it's static, and when the context is disconnect. There is a disconnect between stated context and actual QMS scope or objectives. Those are common pitfalls to avoid. Now, let's do it together in a real world implementation example, which is ready to, you can copy paste and customize it to your country or region and your regulations. So I will flow with this example of the fictional company, a realistic fiction company from New Zealand. But then when you are viewing from a different country, you can just tailor everything I'm showing you to your organization and you are good to go. The company background is Universal Harvest Food Limited. Universal Harvest Food Limited is established in 2012, is a medium-sized bakery ingredient manufacturer based in Auckland, New Zealand. It has 78 employees and an annual turnover of 20 million New Zealand dollar. The company specializes in premium flour blends, baking mixes, and bread improvers. Its customers base include artisan bakery, artisan bakeries, supermarket bakery departments like Countdown, New World, Pack and Save, and food services providers. Universal Harvest Food is preparing for ISO 9001 certification in 2027. So you start with your document by writing down the background of your company, including the employees number and the customers also, because those are the overview of your interested parties and your product and the revenue. Now, then you go to context analysis. Now, here the context analysis workshop details conducted for the Universal Harvest Food Limited. The start with date of the workshop is February 15, 2026. Participants include Sarah Chan, who is a managing director, James Wilson, who is operational manager, Wal Ball, who is quality manager, and Tom Richard, who is commercial manager, and Maria Santos, who is production manager. So you see, you list the date, and when you put the participants, their full names with their designation, you need also to put it down. And then you need to put down the duration of the workshop. Here is 3 hours. Facilitator is the quality manager, Wal Ball. So you need to put the facilitator name with the designation. Now, After the workshop is conducted or during the workshop, they have identified external issues and they wrote it down as following. External issues identified. First, the market trend. In market trend, there is an increasing demand for gluten-free and organic flour blend, with 35% growth in inquiries in 2025. An artisan bakery sector growing in Auckland and Wellington, and export opportunities to Pacific Islands. Second external issue is regulatory change. Food Act 2024 compliance requirements for food control plants. MPI, the Ministry for Primary Industry, increase inspection frequency. New allergen labeling requirements under Australian New Zealand Food Standards Code, FSANZ, Standard 1.2.3, mandatory warning and advisory statement. This is the second external issue identified. So also in your organization, you need to list down all the requirements that are applicable to you and state exactly what happened. The third external issues identified is customer expectations. Major customers, the artisan bakery groups New Zealand, with 28% of revenue, now require ISO 9001 certification by June 2027. And Foodstuff New Zealand demanding faster delivery within 48 hours versus the current delivery time, which takes 5 days lead time. Export customers also requiring halal certificate. So this is the third external issues being identified. And also for your customer expectations, you need to state exactly who are the customers, what are their expectations, what are their market shares, and compare with current practices also. The third external issues are competitor actions. Two competitors achieved FSSC 22000 version 6.0 certification in 2025. Australian importing cake mixes entering New Zealand markets at lower price. And then you have Goodman Fielder expanding product range. Those are the external issues related to competitor actions. So also in your organization, when you are listing the competitor actions, you have to state exactly what is happening. All right, it should not be generic, and it should be it must be connected. It must be specific to your organization. The fourth external issue is supply chain. Wheat price volatility, which is affected by drought in Canterbury region. Key flour mill suppliers like Champion Flour Mills reducing production capacity, shipping delays from Australia suppliers, and reliance on important specialty ingredients, including cocoa and improvers. Again, so when you are listing your supply chain, which is part of external issues, you need again to have a smart statement. Has to be specific, measurable, attainable, time and time bound. All right, relevant and time bound. So again, always state what is related to your company and what is current. So this is the fifth external issue being identified in our document here. The number six external issue identified with our exemplar company, Universal Harvest Food, is technology. Competitors using automated batching system. So the Universal Harvest is still manual, which is our exemplar company, still using manual batching system, and customer ordering moving to online portals, a need for digital traceability system. Those are the technology issues identified by our exemplar company. So again, you need to do exactly what we are doing here. Just tailor it to your organization and the actual things that are happening with your organization, okay? Those are the external issues. Now let's move to internal issues identified with their description in a similar fashion. First, we will start with production capacity as our first internal issues here with our exemplar company. Production capacity, current 3 production lines running at 82% capacity. And line 2, which is for cake mix, frequently breaks down with 14 breakdown in last year, 2025, and no capacity for new gluten-free line without investment. So those are the internal issues you need to identify with your organization, and you have to have data to back them up. So this is the first internal issue identified by our exemplar company. The second internal issue is equipment age. Okay. Ribbon blender, which is line 1, installed in 2010, 16 years ago. Maintenance costs are increasing. Packaging machine is outdated and is causing 9% of rejection rate. So those are the issues, internal issues related to equipment age. And again, you need to state your analysis with data and facts to back them up so that you can get the budget. And also you can improve, not just stating, but you can also improve. You are not doing here only for certification. You are doing it for the organization. All right. Third internal issues is the workforce skill that is being identified by our exemplar company here. The workforce skills, 38% of production staff are over 55 years old. So there is a retirement risk, and only 2 staff are trained on quality systems, and high turnover in packing department with 32% turnover annually, and difficulty recruiting skilled workers in Auckland, and need for New Zealand living wage consideration. So you see, our exemplar company is always stating the analysis with data and facts. And all these are investable for business continuity. So you can do the same, but always have real data for your organization, all right? Those are the issues identified for the workforce skill. The fourth internal issue is quality culture. Our exemplar company here is stated there is a reactive approach to quality issues. Production prioritizes speed over capacity, and 18 customer complaints in 2025. The complaints are up from 9 complaints in 2024. In 2025, they have 18 complaints. And there was one MPI warning letter for labeling non-compliance. So those are quality cultures identified, again, with facts, with data, and for the business continuity of the organization. You can do the same for your organization to ensure sustainability. The fifth internal issues identified by our exemplar company is financial constraints. Our exemplar company here stated that there is a limited capacity budget with the need for 250 New Zealand dollar for $250,000 New Zealand dollar for 2026, and the bank loan required for new equipment from ANZ or Westpac, New Zealand, and cash flow tight due to extended customer payment terms, with which has 60 days for major supermarkets, and this is common in New Zealand. So again, when you are demonstrating your financial constraints as part of your internal analysis and internal issues, you need to state the facts with data and drive the improvement. The issue number 6 for internal issues identified is documentation. Our exemplar company here is stated procedures outdated or missing, and no formal training records, record systems, and traceability gaps identified in mock recall. It took 8 hours to trace one batch, and per the requirement, it must be under 4 hours. Another issue, non-compliance with Food Act 2024 record keeping requirements. So those are the issues identified related to documentation. You can do the same, just tailor it to your company. So the document created here, which you can create with a similar structure, the above statements. Now, the context analysis. Start with the document number QMS dash DOC dash 001 version 1.0, date February 15, 2026, review date February 2027, and approved by Sarah Chan, Managing Director, and prepared by Walball, Quality Manager. So this is the documents now, the context analysis document, right? First, you start with how context is linked to QMS decision, right? You must link your context to QMS, and this gap is a common pitfall that you need to avoid, right? So how context links to QMS decisions? First, QMS scope decision. The scope decision is to exclude design, which is clause 8.3, because all products are manufactured to customer specifications or standard recipes. Secondly, the quality objectives that are set during this workshop to reduce customer complaints to under 6 per year and achieve 99% on-time delivery and reduce rejection rate to under 3% and achieve 100% compliance with MPI requirements. For risk assessment priorities, start with MPI compliance, supplier dependency, equipment reliability, staff competence, and traceability. For resources allocation, invest automated batching system with 130,000 New Zealand dollar implement digital batch recording system with 40,000 New Zealand dollar, and hire quality technician and engage MPI compliance consultant. So now you see they have started the context analysis document with the link to quality management system decisions. And you need to do the same. Start with the scope decision. If you have exclusion, you have to state it. If you don't, you also have to state it. And then you have to include the objectives that you have set as an outcome of the context analysis. This is the result of context analysis. If you see the complaints reduction, because they have complaints that skyrocketed in 2025 from 2024. 2024 have 9 complaints, 2025 they have 18 complaints. Now they set objectives to be under 6. And if you see other objectives also are set accordingly. So you need to do the same. You set your objectives that are a result of the outcomes from the analysis. And then for your risk assessment, you need to prioritize based also on the context analysis outcome. You need to put the priorities of the risk assessment. And accordingly, you allocate the budget. The budget is allocated now based also on the analysis. So you have 4 elements to link your QMS: scope, objectives, risk priorities, and resources allocation. That's the first section of your documents. Secondly, you include regulatory compliance context. Here you start with the Food Act. This is the local regulatory here, but you can include your jurisdiction regulatory. Here, Food Act 2014, operating under Food Control Plan, FCP, registered with MPI number, so and so. You need to include your registration number. The MPI verifications, annual verification audit by MPI recognized verifier. Here we have assure quality as the verifier by MPI. So again, you need to state the annual verification of your with your regulations. And then we have FSA and Z standards, compliance with Australian New Zealand Food Standards Code, standard number 1.2.3 for mandatory warning and advisory statements, and standard number 1.2.4 for labeling of ingredients. So you need to include also applicable standards of your regulations in your regulatory compliance contexts. You need to tailor this to your regulatory in your local government or local jurisdiction, and also you need to include the exact applicable standards to your operation. Then we have WorkSafe New Zealand for health and safety at Work Act 2015 compliance. So here you need to include also for your health and safety compliance. And for environmental, you need to include regional council. Here in our example included regional council consents for trade waste discharge, which is trans-Tasman trade consideration impact, imported raw materials. So if you see here the regulatory compliance, they include all the requirements of the standards that we are going to implement with our exemplar company. It started with the Food Act for food safety, MPI verifications for quality, FSA and Z standards, and also WorkSafe and environmental regulatory requirements. So you need to list accordingly. The review process also need to be stated. And here in our exemplar company, reviewed at management review meetings quarterly, to be done quarterly. They agreed instead of annually, they are doing it quarterly. And also the update need to be stated. When are you going to update your context analysis document? when major customers gain or lost, a new MPI requirement announced, a significant equipment change, or when new product line is added. So you also need to state when are you going to update your context analysis documents. And those are similar updates requirements as per the standards. So when you gain or lose customer, you need to update. When there are new requirements from your local regulatory, you need to update. And when you have equipment change, you need to update. And also when you introduce new production line, you also need to update. So you need to state it in a similar fashion. And the last update also need to be stated. In our exemplar company, the last update was January 2026, when they added a new major customer, which is Foodstuff North Island example. Also, you need to state the last time you updated your context. And here, the audit's evidence you can prepare for the context analysis. You can write those down and prepare them. First, you have context analysis documents with the meeting minutes must be attached, SWOT analysis metrics, pistol analysis spreadsheet, linked document showing how context issues connect to QMS scope, objective, and risk register, and management review minutes showing context discussed and decision made, and MPI verification reports showing compliance status. So those are the documents that are prepared for the audit. Number 6, you can alter that to your local regulation. So this example again show exactly what good looks like for a New Zealand food manufacturer and can be adapted by changing company name, product, and specific issues to any New Zealand food manufacturing operations, or customize it to your country or your region and regulations. Right? Now, as we continue with ISO 9001, let's now take a look at Clause 4.2 for understanding the need and expectations of interested parties. For understanding the needs and expectations of interested parties, we have subclass 4.2. The requirement here is to determine interested parties relevant to QMS and their requirements. Mandatory documents here, we need interested parties register, and we need review records and review this register annually or when change occur, and retain it for 3 years at the minimum. During audits, the evidence we need to present, we need to prove that the list of interested parties exists, including customers, regulations, certification body, suppliers, employees, stakeholders, and local communities. All right. And also, we need to prove that the requirements of each parties are documented, and documentation of which requirements are relevant to QMS. And also, we need to show that evidence requirements are monitored and also are reviewed. The implementation steps here for food manufacturing specifically. First, you need to identify all the interested parties who can affect or be affected by your QMS. Secondly, for each party, you need to document their requirements and expectations, including customers, expectations for specifications, delivery time, quality standards, audit rights, and traceability, and the expectations for the regulatory, including food safety, compliance, labeling, environmental permits, and worker safety, and also the expectations for certification bodies, including standard compliance, audit access, and corrective actions, and also the requirements and expectations of suppliers, including the payment terms, forecasts, and quality agreements, and also the requirements and expectations of employees, including safe working conditions, training, and fair treatment. So for each party, you need to document their requirements and expectations. And then you need to determine which requirements must be addressed in QMS. And you need to mark that as QMS relevant because some of them are not relevant to QMS, are handled by other departments. So you need to determine. And then you need to link the requirements to QMS process and objectives, like we did earlier. And then you need to review during the management review also and update accordingly as needed. The common pitfalls here to avoid: having generic lists not specific to your organization's actual stakeholders, or missing key parties like co-packer customers, contract manufacturer, or local authorities, and requirements not linked to QMS processes or objectives, or having no evidence of monitoring changing requirements. Those are common pitfalls that a lot of people fail to obtain certifications, a lot of organizations, and you can avoid them. All right, now let's demonstrate with the real world example again, and you can copy paste the same way we did earlier. The company background here is Kiwi Premium Food Limited. Kiwi Premium Food Limited, established in 2012, is a medium-sized bakery ingredient manufacturer based in Hamilton, New Zealand. It has 78 employees and an annual turnover of 12 million New Zealand dollar. The company specializes in premium flour blends, baking mixes, and bread improvers. Its customers base includes artisan bakeries, supermarket bakery departments like Pound Down, New World, Pack and Save. Those are the popular supermarkets here, and food service providers. Kiwi Premium Food is preparing for ISO 9001 certification in 2026. The interested parties workshop details. We are going to go through it. You can develop again the same system. You start with the date. The date here for the Kiwi Premium is February 2026, 1 week after the context analysis. Usually that's the practice, conduct 1 week after the context analysis. Participants here, you have Sarah Chan, Managing Director, James Wilson, Operation Manager, Wal Ball, Quality Manager, Tom Richards, Commercial Manager, Maria Santos, Production Supervisor, and Linda Foster, HR Manager, and David Komar, Maintenance Manager. If you notice here again, we include the participants with their full names and designations, and also from diverse management and organizational background. So always have multidisciplinary from different departments. Duration of the workshop here again is 3 hours. Facilitator is a quality manager, Wall Ball. So now we are going to create interested parties register. Here for our exemplar company, the interested parties register created. First, we start with the customers. Can do the same. You start with the customer as the first interested parties. Who are the customers? Here we have Artisan Bakery Groups, New Zealand, with 28% revenue, and Foodstuff North Island or New World and Pack and Save and 22% revenue, and Woolworth, New Zealand, which is known as Countdown, with 15% revenue, and 38 independent bakeries and export customers in Fiji and Samoa. So again, when you are listing down your interested party and you start with the customer or whichever you start with, you have to list them exactly who they are with the percentage of their share in the revenue. Their requirements. Now the requirements of the customers, you have product specifications with the moisture must be maintained under 14%. Protein content must be maintained between 11 and 13%. And those are the specifications for the customers requirements, and also the delivery within 48 hours, and full traceability per Food Safety or Food Act 2014, and allergen declaration per FSSC standards number 1.2.3, and certification analysis with each delivery, and right to audit facility, and ISO 9001 certification, which is requested by Artisan Bakery Groups by June 2026, and Halal certificate for export requirements and compliance with New Zealand Food Standard Code. So this is how you list down the requirements of your customers with the specifications, with the delivery requirements, with the traceability as per the regulations. Allergen declaration is applicable to you as per the standards regulations, and also the certificate of analysis with each delivery, and right to audit the facility and certification requirement, and export certification requirement and compliance with your local regulations. This is how you list down the requirements of the customer. And then our exemplar company listed the QMS relevant, and the answer here is yes. These requirements are relevant to QMS, and QMS drives product specifications, traceability system, document control, supplier management, and MPI compliance. So you need to do that again, avoid the generic, and do the relevance analysis here in your interested parties registry. Include, when you say yes is relevant to QMS, you need to state exactly what is relevant. What does QMS do to drive these requirements or to implement these requirements? All right, do it the same way. And then how to monitor that you are achieving the requirement of your customers. How are you going to monitor it? Here it's going to be monitored through quarterly business review and complaints analysis and customer satisfaction survey. So also you need to include that and avoid being generic and vague, and state exactly how are you going to do that. Once you determine it's relevant, include how are you going to monitor it to make sure you achieve them. So that's for the first interested party, the customer. The second interested party are regulatory authorities. Who are the regulatory authorities? Here in New Zealand, we have Ministry for Primary Production, MPI, Auckland Council Environmental Health, WorkSafe New Zealand, Waikato Region Council for Environmental Consent, and Commerce Commission, and New Zealand Food Safety and ZFS. So again, when you list down your regulatory authority, you need to state exactly who are they based on where you are in this world, right? And now the requirements of your regulatory. Here, our exemplar company lists down the requirement for the regulatory. First, we have Food Act 2014 and Food Regulations 2015 compliance for food control plan, and you include the number. And then Animal Products Act is another requirement in 1991 if handling dairy ingredients. And another requirement for Australian New Zealand Food Standards Code, FSA and Z compliance is standard. You need to list a specific standard. Here is standard 1.2.3 and standard 1.2.4 and standard 1.2.10 and standard 1.3.1. And the requirements, another for Health and Safety at Work Act 2015, and requirements for Resources Management Act of 1991, for Trade West Consent TWC 2026, or 45, and requirement for Weight and Measures Act 1987 and Fair Trade Acts of 1986 with accurate labeling. So you see, as how you need to be specific with your regulatory requirements and list all the applicable regulatory requirements. This is critically important. I can't stress it enough. So you need to do that. Once you list down your regulators and the requirements, then you list down the QMS relevance. The question is, are all these requirements relevant to QMS? The answer here is yes. For legal compliance obligations and MPI verification readiness and corrective action systems. All these are done through quality management system. So yes, these requirements are relevant to QMS or quality management system. So how are you going to monitor to make sure you meet the requirements? Here our exemplar company stated through legal register to be updated monthly, MPI verification audits annual by Assure Quality, which is recognized by MPI, and WorkSafe inspection and compliance audit quarterly. So you stay updated and you keep up with the schedule with the regulations of when they will conduct their annual inspections. So you need to do that also with your company. Now that's the second interested party. The third interested party is certification body. For our exemplar company, who is the certification company is SAI Global New Zealand, is selected for ISO 9001 certification, and you can select yours there. The requirements of the certification body include QMS complies with ISO 9001 2015. Access for audits is stage 1 is scheduled for April 2026, and stage 2 is scheduled for May 2026. And corrective actions to be closed within 90 days, an annual surveillance audit, and notification of significant change, and JAS-ANZ accreditation must be maintained. So this is how you list down the requirements of your certification body, and you can tailor this to your specific operations and time. Is this relevant to QMS? The implementation to meet the requirement? Yes. QMS drives QMS structure and documentation. So this is relevant. How are you going to monitor it? Our exemplar company stated audit schedule must be maintained, non-conformity tracking system, and pre-audit uh, readiness review. So they state exactly how they are going to do it, and you can replicate the same in your organization. The fourth interested party is suppliers. Who are the suppliers? For our exemplar company, we have champion supplier, flower supplier, who supply wheat flour with 65% of raw materials for our exemplar company, and Goodman Fielder, New Zealand, who supply specialty ingredients, and Australian ingredients uh, company who supply the improvers and enzymes, and Vessi Packing New Zealand, who supplies bags, boxes, and labels, and Fonterra, who supply milk powder for some products. So again, you list down all of your suppliers in your interested party uh, register, okay? With what they supply to you. So don't just list down the name of the suppliers. You need to list down what are they supplying to you. And then the requirements of the suppliers. Here, our exemplar company listed down the requirement of the supplier, the payment within 30 days, and 3 months rolling forecasts, and quality specifications for incoming materials, and minimum order quantities, and lead times, which is 2 weeks for flour and 4 weeks for Australian importer, and 6 weeks for specialty ingredients, and supplier declarations for allergen and GMO status. Those are the requirements for the supplier as an interested party. Is this relevant to QMS? And the answer here is yes. Supplier approval process, incoming inspection, purchase order agreements, and allergen controls are all functions that are done through QMS. So yes, these requirements are relevant to QMS. And you can also do the same. How are you going to monitor them? Our exemplar company here listed down through supplier performance review quarterly, delivery and quality metrics tracked, and supplier audit for critical suppliers. This is how we are going to make sure the expectations are achieved. And you can also do the same with your suppliers. The fifth interested party are employees. Who are the employees here? For our exemplar company, they have 78 employees, from which 11 employees are office staff, 7 are supervisors, 48 are production operations, and 7 are warehouse staff, and 5 are maintenance. So again, you need to list down the same way. In your employees' interested parties, you list down and you divide them by the functions. The requirements of the employees here are Safe Working Environment per Health and Safety at Work Act 2015, and Fair Wage, Living Wage, Ottawa accredited, and Training and Development, and clear procedures, and appropriate PPE, and consultation on H&S matters, with H&S representative being elected, and job security, and compliance with Employment Relations Act of 2000. So this is how you list down the requirements of your employees. And you can tailor this to your location in the world. Is this relevant to QMS? And the answer here is yes. Competence management, training system, work instruction, safety procedures, change management, and worker participation are all functions done by quality management system. So yes, this is relevant to QMS. And you can also do the same. How are you going to monitor to make sure the requirements are met? And our exemplar company here is stated through staff meeting monthly and annual appraisals an H&S committee meeting to be conducted monthly, and exit interviews, and employees engagement survey. Our six interested party are shareholders or the owners. Who are the shareholders? Here, our exemplar company listed down the managing director, Sarah Chan, who holds 55% ownership, and Kiwi Investment Partners, who hold 45% ownership. The requirements here of the shareholders, you need to list down profitable operations with the target of 9% net margin and business growth with 12% revenue increase annually, and risk management and compliance with New Zealand law and protection of company reputation and export growth. So this is how you list down the requirements of the stakeholders in your organization. Again, everything we do here must be specific and measurable and back up with data. And is this relevant to QMS? And the answer here is yes. The management review inputs and performance monitoring and risk management are part of QMS function. So yes, this is relevant to QMS, and you can replicate the same. So how are you going to monitor this? Our exemplar company listed down through monthly management accounts and quarterly board meetings and annual strategic review. And also you can do the same. Our seventh interested parties are local communities and iwis. And who are our local communities and iwis? Here are the residents near the factory, near the area, and Auckland Council. The requirements for the communities: no noise complaints. That's the first requirement. No noise complaints. With the production from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. only, and also order control and traffic management, the delivery vehicles, and local employment opportunities, and respect for Maori culture values and environmental responsibilities. So those are the requirements for our exemplar company's local community as an interested party. And also you need to do that, include your local community wherever you are, and list down their interested, their requirements. All right. Then we have the question again, is this relevant to QMS? And the answer here is partially relevant to QMS for the environmental control, complaint handling, and community engagement. Those are relevant to QMS, so partially yes. How are you going to monitor those? Including community liaison meetings annually, EV consultation when required, and complaints log must be maintained. So this is how you monitor your local community's requirements to make sure they are met. The eighth interested party are the insurance provider. So who is the insurance provider for our exemplar company? The insurance provider is Vero Insurance New Zealand. And the requirements here: fair safety system must be maintained, product recall insurance in place, traceability system operational, risk assessment current, compliance with New Zealand building codes, and earthquake preparedness. Hamilton is low risk, but still we listed that. And you can, again, for your insurance provider, you need to list the same similar requirement and tailor them to your organization and location. Is this relevant to QMS? The answer is yes. Risk management, traceability, preventive maintenance, and business continuity are part of QMS functions. So definitely yes. And you can also model the same in your organization. So how are you going to monitor? Through annual insurance review and incident reporting. The fifth interested party are banks or lenders. Who are they? In our exemplar company, they list down ANZ business banks with 800,000 New Zealand dollar equipment loan. And the requirements here is financial covenant must be met and business plan to be delivered and major change must be notified. And you can do the same with your local banks too. The QMS relevance? No, this is not relevant to QMS. This is financial management is managed outside of QMS scope. So you can escape this, but you need to write it down, but you can answer that it's not relevant. How are you going to monitor this? Quarterly financial report is going to be measured by quarterly financial report. The tenth interested party, our exemplar company listed MPI recognized verifier. And there in your local operations, you have verifier that are recognized by your jurisdiction or by your regulations, and you can list them down too. Those who come to conduct the inspection on behalf of your regulatory. So who is the MPI recognized verifier here for our exemplar company is Assure Quality, who is conducting annual food control plan verification. The requirements, including food control plan implemented and maintained, records complete and maintained per Food Act 2014 requirements with a minimum of 4 years retention of the records, and corrective actions are closed, and traceability system is functional, and staff competency is demonstrated. Those are the requirements for the MPI recognized verifier, which means the verifier is coming on behalf of the regulatory to conduct the assessment, and also you can list down if you have similar in your operations. And QMS relevant, is this relevant to QMS? And the answer is yes. QMS drives food safety documentation, record keeping, and corrective action system. So yes, this is relevant to QMS. So how are you going to monitor it? Our exemplar company listed down through annual verification audit and monthly self-audit checklist, and quarterly management review. You can also list down similar. So now with this analysis, the document created here, first you have interested parties register, you have document number, you have to number it, our exemplar company number it, QMS dash DOC dash 002, version 1.0, date February 20th, 2026. The review date is February 2027 or when significant change occur, and approved by Sarah Chan, the managing director, and prepared by Wal Ball, the quality manager. And how the requirements are linked to QMS again? The customer requirements, the product specification, clause 8.2, contract review procedure. And for MPI and NZFS requirements, the legal compliance register and food control plan and management review inputs. For FSA and Z, the requirements, labeling procedures, and allergen controls and ingredients declaration, and employees' requirements, the competence metrics, class 7.2, training procedure, and H&S consultation, and the supplier requirements, supplier approval through supplier approval, procedures clause 8.4 of purchase and purchase specifications. So this is how you link in the documents. You list down the interested parties and the link to QMS through. Which function are you going to conduct? Like you see in supplier requirements, you are going, is linked, and you are going to conduct supplier approval procedures and purchase specifications, and so on. So you need also to make a similar list for your organization. And then for New Zealand specific compliance link, and in your case, you can link down your country, just replace the name of the New Zealand with your country, and then the jurisdictions or the regulations with your local regulations. Now, in our exemplar company, New Zealand specific compliance link, we have Food Act 2014 through traceability system and record retention for the minimum of 4 years and corrective action procedures for Health and Safety at Work Act 2015 through workers' participations and hazard identification and risk assessment, and for FSA&Z standards through labeling procedures, allergen management, and nutritional information panels, and for the Resources Management Act of 1991 through trade waste monitoring and environmental aspects. So that's how you link your local regulations with the interested parties' requirements and put it specifically how are you linking them. The review triggers, when are you going to be triggered to conduct the review? You also need to list down, similar to the following. When new major customers is gained with over 5% revenue, and when MPI or FSA&Z regulatory change announced, and when significant compliance from any interested parties, when significant complaint from any interested party, then also the review is triggered, and when annual management review, and when certification body change requirements, and when change happen to food control plan requirements. Those are all review triggers, and you can replicate the same. So this register is a living document that drives many QMS processes and is referred during management review, MPI verification, and risk assessments. So you can do the same, review during your management review, your regulations verification, and during risk assessment. Right? Now let's continue with ISO 9001 2015 Quality Management System. And now let's take a look at clause 9, at clause 4.3 of ISO 9001, determining the scope of the QMS. So in subclass 4.3, it requires you to determine boundaries and applicability of QMS to establish scope, and you need to consider external and internal issues as per clause 4.1, and requirements of interested parties as per clause 4.2, and product and service scope and product and services, and the scope must be available as documented information. The document you need here, you need QMS scope statement, and this is a mandatory documented information requirements, and you need scope review records to retain them for the life of certification in 3 years, and you need to review the scope when contexts change. The audit evidence here to prove that you meet the requirements of subclass 4.3, you need to prove that the scope statement is clearly defining physical boundaries, side and building and areas, and organizational boundaries, department and functions, and product and service are covered, and processes are included. Also, you need to present a proof of the justification for any exclusion, and only class 8 can be excluded, and only if not applicable. And also during the audit, you need to present the proof that evidence of scope reflecting the actual operations, and that scope is available to interested parties. So you need to prove all these points to meet class 4.3. Now let's look at the implementation steps for food manufacturing for class 4.3. First, you need to define physical scope, site address, production area, warehouse, and office. Office is included. And then you need to define the product scope with all the products manufacturing on site, including seasonal, co-packing, and trail product. And you need to define the process scopes, including receiving, storage, production, packaging, dispatch, and supporting processes. And then you need to identify any exclusion with justification. For example, clause 8.3 design is excluded because the product is manufactured to customer specifications. So you need to include, you need to identify any exclusion with justification. I exclude this because of this. And then you need to ensure a scope statement is specific and not generic. And you need to make the scope available. You need to display it in facility, including QMS manual, and provide the scope to the auditors. And you need to review the scope when adding new products, when adding new lines or new processes. All right? Common pitfalls to avoid when creating a scope here. Avoid vague scope like food manufacturing without the specific products or processes. Avoid excluding seasonal products or co-packing arrangements. Avoid unjustified exclusion or excluding clauses other than clause 8. You cannot exclude any other clause. Any other clause you cannot exclude. Or also avoid scope not updated when operations change, and avoid scope not available or accessible to interested parties. Those are common pitfalls that you need to avoid. All right. Now let's look at the real world example. Real world implementation example with Kiwi Premium Food Limited. Again, first you need to define the workshop. So our exemplar company here, I'm going to go through it and you can just replicate, as we said earlier, replicate to your organization, change the regulatory requirements and the names of the products and the name of the people. Just tailor it. The date is February 5th, 2026. Facilitator is quality manager, Wall Ball. Participants, operation manager and production supervisor and warehouse manager. And duration is 2 hours. The QMS scope statement is created. Quality management system scope statement. Organization, Kiwi Premium Food Limited. Document number QMS-DOC-003 version 1.0, date February 5th, 2026. Approved by Sarah Chan, Managing Director, prepared by Ball Quality Manager. The physical scope, the site address, including with all the site details, including the unit number, the city number, the city name, and the city name, and the Auckland, sorry, and the country name. So the physical scope, site address, Kiwi Premium Food Limited, unit number X in Auckland, New Zealand. Areas included: raw material warehouse in Unit 12, ground floor, 750 square meter. Production area, Unit 13 to Units 12 to 13, ground floor. The area is 1,100 square meter. And in production area, you have line 1 for premium flour blends, line 2 for baking uh, mixes, line 3 for, just give me a second, line 3 for bread improvers. Then in packaging area, in unit 13, ground floor, 380 square meter. Finished goods warehouse, unit 13, ground floor, with 580 square meter. Quality laboratory, unit 12, mezzanine, with 75 square meter. Office, unit 12, mezzanine, with 190 square meter. Maintenance workshop, unit 13, ground floor, 995 square meter. And the area excluded is none. The entire facility is covered by QMS. Product scope, you have product manufacturing, line 1, premium flour blends with 62% of the production volume is a strong white bread flour blend, soft cake flour blend, wholemeal bread flour blend, artisan pizza flour blend, gluten-free flour blends, which is new and is launching in Q2 2026. Organic flour blends, export to Australia. In line 2, we have baking mixes with 23% of the production volume. Vanilla, including vanilla sponge cake mix, chocolate cake mix, lemon cake mix, carrot cake mix, seasonal product, Anzac biscuit mix, and pavlova mix. In line 3 for bread improvers, which has 15% of production volume, with the standard bread improver, rapid dough improver, sourdough improver, sourdough enhancer, and enzyme base improver. Those are the KPIs in 3 lines. All products manufactured on site are included in QMS scope, including trial batches for new product development, seasonal products, for example, Christmas cake mix and hot cross bun flour, co-packed products manufactured for other brands, export products like for to Pacific Islands and Australia, and reworked and reprocessed materials. All these products are including QMS scope. For the process scope, the core processes include customer orders processing, raw material receiving and storage, including imported ingredients, production planning and scheduling, batching and blending with manual semi-automated, packaging with bags of 500 grams, 1 kg, 5 kg, 12.5 kg, 25 kg, and boxes for retails, labeling and coding, in compliance with FSA labeling requirements, finished product storage with ambient and temperature controlled, dispatch and delivery with own vehicles within 8-kilometer radius, and national carriers like main freight and toll for nationwide delivery and international freight forwarders for export. For support processes, purchasing and supplier management for New Zealand and overseas suppliers, equipment maintenance, including preventative and corrective maintenance, calibration of weighing and measuring equipments traceable to New Zealand standards, cleaning and sanitation per food control plan, pest control contracted to Rent-to-Kill Initial New Zealand, but is managed by Kiwi Premium, training and competence management, document and record control per Food Act 2014 requirement, internal audits, management review, corrective actions and preventive actions, traceability and recall management as per Food Act 2014, MPI food control plan compliance. For management processes, we have strategic planning, quality objective setting and monitoring, risk and opportunity management, resources allocation, performance monitoring and analysis, and regulatory compliance monitoring, including for MPI, FSANZ, and WorkSafe New Zealand. Exclusions, we have clause 8.3, design and development of the product and services is included. Justification for exclusion, Kiwi Premium food manufacturing products in two ways. The first way is customer specifications, with 68% of the products are manufactured to detailed specification provided by customers. For example, artisan bakery groups provides exact formulation for their brand's flour blend. And the second way is standard recipes, with 32% of the products followed established, proven recipes that have not changed in formulation for over 5 years. For example, the standard strong white bread flour blend. Kiwi Premium does not develop a new formulation per the recipe in the house, does not conduct product development or R&D activities, does not design packaging, like, because customers provide artwork or we use the standard design compliance with FSANZ requirements, and does not modify product specifications. Any customer requests for formulation change are referred to external food technologists, a plant and food research in New Zealand, or other customers' own R&D departments. Note, note if Kiwi Premium begins developing new formulation in-house, which is planned for 2027 with new gluten-free range, clause 8.3 will be included and this scope will be updated. Boundaries and interfaces. So what is in scope? All activities from receiving customer orders to delivering finished products, management of outsourced processes, including pest controls, calibration, waste disposal, and MPI verification, control of customer provided materials, for example, branded packaging supplied by customers, and compliance with New Zealand food safety regulations, including Food Act 2014 and FSANZ standards. And what is out of scope? Product design and development is included as above. Activities at customer sites, for example, technical support at bakeries, is not a service we offer. Financial management and accounting, not relevant to product quality. And human resources administration, recruitment, payroll is not relevant to product quality, but competence management is in scope. Export documentation and customer clearance is handled by freight forwarders. Regulatory context. This QMS operates within the following New Zealand regulatory framework: Food Act 2014 for food control plants, FCP 000123 registered with MPI, FSANZ Food Standards Code, standard number 1.2.3 and 1.2.4 and 1.2.10 and 1.3.1. Health and Safety at Work Act 2015, Resources Management Act of 1991, Trade West Consent TWC 2025 045 for Waikato Regional Council, and Weights and Measurement Act of 1987 and Fair Trade Act of 1986. Those are the regulatory and framework of New Zealand of which this QMS operates within. Applicability. This QMS applies to all products listed above, all employees involved in process affected product quality, all shifts. Currently there is day shift from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and Monday to Friday, and night shifts from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. from Monday to Thursday for line 1 only. All outsourced processes that affect product conformity is also applied to, and all regulatory requirements applicable to food manufacturing in New Zealand. Availability. This scope statement is displayed in notice board in production area entrance, English and Tiarua Maori summary, included in employees induction training, available on company shared drive, provided to certification body SAI Global NZ, provided to MPI verifier assure quality, available to customers upon request, and reviewed during management review meeting. The review of update of the scope. This scope will be reviewed and updated when new products or products categories are added, new processes are introduced, for example, automated batching system, which is planned for 2026, facilities are expanded or relocated, or when the design and development activities are commenced, or when significant organizational change occur, or when MPI food control plan requirements change, or when FSA and Z standards are updated, or when at the minimum annually during management review. The next review is set for February 2027 or upon significant change. So how this scope was used? For audit planning, SAI Global New Zealand Auditor used this scope to plan stage 1 and stage 2 audit, knew exactly what audit and what was excluded. All right. I know I went through it so fast, and actually I was supposed to skip it and just go with you to the checklist and other parts, but I wanted to show you how to draft the scope to be as comprehensive and specific and applicable and effective and to the world best practices. This is how you draft the best scope statement. All right? Just try to replicate it and see what will happen. All right? You will change how your organization operates by stating scope like this. And again, if you need it, just comment below and I will send it to you so that you can tailor it. So how this scope was used? First, it was used for audit planning. SAI Global New Zealand Auditor, which is certification body that was selected by this exemplar company, used this scope to plan stage 1 and stage 2 audit and knew exactly what to audit and what was excluded. And it was also used with MPI verifications, assure quality verifier, confirm QMS scope aligned with food control plan scope. It was also used for internal audit program because internal audit schedule covers all the processes listed in the scope. And it was used for training new employees, showing scope during introduction to understand what QMS covers. It was used for certification certificate, ISO 9001 certification issued by SAI Global New Zealand states this exactly scope. And it was used for customer confidence. Major customer like Artisan Bakery Group viewed the scope and confirmed it covered their requirements. So you see the benefit when you have comprehensive scope. You don't need to struggle to gather the documents. A scope will be enough to show the real picture to the interested parties. With this scope, the audit evidence are available. You have a scope statement, QMS-DOC-003. You have workshop meeting minutes showing how scope was determined also. You need to create one. And also site map showing area coverage. You also have to have an image of the site map and include it, okay? The map of your uh, company and the layout. Just keep it with your evidence. And the product lists cross-reference to scope and justification documents for class 8.3 exclusion with evidence such as customer expectations and standards recipes, customer specifications, and food control plan, which is numbered showing alignment with QMS scope, and management review minutes showing scope reviewed and approved, and MPI verification report confirming scope adequacy. All are these evidence you can use in your audit. So this scope is specific, clear, compliance with New Zealand regulations, and audit ready. And anyone can copy this format and adapt it to their own New Zealand food manufacturing facilities or to their own country and region. Exactly the same way. Just let me know if you need it. All right, we are continuing with QMS. And now let's move to ISO 9001 class 4.4 for QMS and its process. In subclass 4.4.1, the requirement is to establish, implement, maintain, and continually improve QMS, including needed processes and their interactions. In the documents, mandatory documents here, you should have process map or process interaction diagram and process description for each processes. The records, you need process review records and review it manually and retain it for 3 years. The evidence you can present to the auditors, you should present process map showing all QMS processes and their interactions. And for all the processes, it should include inputs, outputs, sequence, interactions, criterias, methods, resources, responsibility, risks, monitoring, performance indicators. And also, you should present evidence of processes are controlled and improved. So when you present those, you meet the requirement of subclass 4.4.1. And for subclass 4.4.2, you need it requires you to maintain documented information to support process operations and retain documented information to have confidence process to have confidence that process are carried out as planned. The required documents here, you need process documentation, including the procedures, work instructions, and forms. The records, you need process records demonstrating conformity and retention varies by the process. So you need to see the specific clauses. For the audit evidence, you need to present documented procedures for key processes and work instructions for production operations and forms and templates used and records proving processes executed as planned. The implementation step for food manufacturing. First, you need to identify all the QMS processes, management processes, including planning and review, and the core processes, including receiving, production, packaging, and dispatching. And for support processes, you need to identify maintenance, calibration, and training document control. Once you identify all the processes, then you need to create process maps showing how processes interact. For example, production requires trained operators from HR process, right? And calibrated equipment from maintenance process. Once you create process map showing how process interact, then you need for each process create a documents. The documents must include purpose, scope, input and output, sequence of activities, responsibilities, resources needed, and monitoring methods and performance criteria. Then you need to develop procedures for complex processes, working instructions for production operation. And then you need to define what records each process must create and retention period for the records and implement processes and collect records and then monitor process performance and improve accordingly. The common pitfalls to avoid here, avoid when process map is too generic or copied from templates, avoid processes identified don't match actual operations, avoid missing key processes, for example, the changeover or sanitation or allergen control, and avoid no evidence of process interactions, avoid procedures exist but not followed in practice, and avoid records incomplete or not retained per the requirements. All right. And now let's look at the class 5, the leadership in ISO 9001 2015. In class 5 leadership, subclass 5.1.1 requirement is for top management to demonstrate leadership and commitment to QMS. There is no mandatory document required here, but it needs to be demonstrated through the actions. And for the records, you need management review records and meeting minutes, and retention period is 3 years. The evidence you need to provide to the auditors include evidence that top management takes accountability for QMS effectiveness, resources allocated to QMS requirements integrated into business process, and management promotes processes through approach and risk-based thinking. Those are the evidences you can present to meet to or to demonstrate the top management commitment. For class 5.1.2, it requires top management to demonstrate customer focus. There is no mandatory document here, but the records you need customer requirements reviews, records, and complaints analysis, and you retain those records for 3 years. And for the auditor, you need to present the evidence, including customer requirements being determined and met, and risk affecting products being product conformity being addressed, and also focus on enhancing customer satisfaction. For clause 5.2.1, it requires quality policy to be established and appropriate to purpose and the context of the organization. Mandatory document required here, you need quality policy is a mandatory documented information, and you need policy review records, and you need to review your policy annually and retain the records for the life of the certification, which is usually 3 years. The evidence you need to present to the auditors here, you need to prove the policy includes commitment to meet requirements and continual improvement. You need to present frameworks for quality objectives, and you need to present approved that the policy is approved by the management and communicated and understood by all the interested parties. And then in clause 5.2.2, it requires quality policy to be communicated and to be available and understood by all. Mandatory document here, again, is quality policy to be displayed and be accessible. And you need communication records and retain those records for 3 years. Evidence to prove to the auditors, you need policy to be displayed in facilities so that the auditor can observe that, and employees should be able to explain the policy, and the policy is available to interested parties also. That's how you meet the requirement of clause 5.2.2. For clause 5.3, it requires roles, responsibilities, and authorities to be assigned and communicated. Mandatory document requirement here, you must have organizational chart and job description and authority metrics. And you need assignment records. And you need to retain those records for the duration of the employees plus 3 years. And the documents you need to present to the auditors must include clear reporting structure, and responsibility for QMS conformities are defined, and authority to take corrective actions are assigned, and management representative are identified if that is applicable to you. And that's how you meet clause 5.3. And we are continuing with the complete checklist, clause checklist of ISO 9001 2015, and clause 6, planning. In clause 6.1.1, it requires you to determine risk and opportunities that needs to be addressed to ensure QMS achieves intended results. Mandatory documents here, you need to have risk and opportunity register. And for the records, you need to have risk assessment and review records, and you need to review them annually and also retain them for 3 years. The evidence you need to present to the auditors here, you need to prove that risks are identified considering context 4.1, and interested parties considering clause 4.2. And also you need to prove that opportunities for improvement are identified, and you need to show the proof that risk evaluation methodology is defined to the auditor. For clause 6.1.2, it requires plan actions to address risks and opportunities and integrate into QMS processes and evaluate the effectiveness of the plan actions. Mandatory requirement here, you need to have risk treatment plans document, and you need to have actions records and effectiveness review, and you need to retain those records for 3 years. When the audit comes, you need to present the evidence to meet clause 6.1.2. You need evidence that actions planned for significant risk are implemented and actions integrated into processes, and that evidence of implementations is available and effectiveness have been evaluated. For clause 6.2.1, it requires you to establish quality objectives at relevant functions and levels, consistent with policy, measurable, monitored, communicated, and updated. And the mandatory requirements here, you must have quality objective documents. And for the records, you need to have objective monitoring records and retain them for 3 years. In time of the audit, you need to present proof that objectives are smart, are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. You need to present the proof of objectives at department or process level, and you need to present proof of links to quality policy, and you need to present the proof for regular monitoring evidence. For class 6.2.2, it requires plans. It requires you to plan how to achieve objectives, of what you need to achieve, the resources you need to achieve those objectives, and who will achieve which objectives, and when will this objective be achieved, and how results are evaluated for objectives being achieved. The requirement here, you need objective action plan, and you need implementation records and retain those records for 3 years. During the audit, you need to present evidence including action plans for each objective, resources assigned, responsibility are cleared, timeline is defined, and evaluation methods are specified. For class 6.3, it requires you to plan change to QMS in controlled manner considering purpose, integrity, resources, and responsibilities. And the requirement document here, you need to have change management records, you need to have change requests, impact assessments, and implementation records. And you need to maintain those records to retain them for 3 years. During the audit, you need to present evidence of change planned before implementation, impact on QMS have been assessed, resources are allocated, responsibilities are assigned, and change are controlled and verified. We continue with ISO 9001 2015 Quality Management System, and we continue with complete clause checklist. And now let's look at clause 7, support, and this is part 1. So in clause 7.1.1, it requires you to determine and provide resources needed for QMS. And the documents required here, you need resources planning document, and you need resources allocation records and retain those records for 3 years. During the audit, you need to present evidence of resources being identified and provided, including people, infrastructure, environment, monitoring, measurement, resources, and organizational knowledge. For class 7.1.2, it requires you to determine and provide persons necessary for effective operations of QMS. The documents requiring here, you need to have a staffing plan and competence requirements documents. And you need to have personnel records, and you need to retain those records during the employment of the personnel plus 7 years. During the audit, you need to present evidence that adequate staffing levels is available and evidence of competence requirements have been defined and personnel competence for assigned roles. For clause 7.1.3, it requires you to determine, provide, and maintain infrastructure needed for process operations. The required documents, including infrastructure register and maintenance plans. And you need to have maintenance records and retain them for the life of equipment plus 3 years. During the audit, the evidence you need to present proof of building, equipment, utilities, transport, and IT being identified, and maintenance schedules are defined, and preventive maintenance are performed, and breakdown records are available. Then in class 7.1.4, it requires you to determine, provide, maintain environment necessary for process operations. The required documents, you need to have environmental monitoring plans, and you need to have environmental records, including temperature and humidity, etc., and retain those environmental records for 3 years. During audit, you need to present evidence for environmental conditions being defined, including temperature and humidity, and lighting and hygiene. You need to present evidence of monitoring being performed and controls in place when conditions deviate. For class 7.1.5.1, it requires you to determine monitoring and measurement resources needed to ensure they are suitable and maintained. And the documents you need here, you need calibration schedule and equipment register, and then you need to have calibration certificates and verification records and retain them for the life of the equipment plus 3 years. Evidence you need to present to the auditor include M&M equipment identification, calibration frequency being defined, calibration being performed by accredited lab, and equipment being labeled with calibration status, and out of tolerance actions being taken. Class 7.1.5.2 requires you to ensure measurement traceability where required, and the documents required, you need to have calibration certificates traceable to international and national standards, and you need to have traceability records and retain those records for the life of the equipment plus 3 years. The evidence you need to present to the auditor here, including calibration, must be traceable to SI units or certified reference standards, and certificates show traceability chain. Now let's look. Now let's continue with ISO 9001 2015 complete class checklist. Class 7 support, and this part 2. Class 7.1.6 requires you to determine organizational knowledge needed, maintained, and make it available, and consider current knowledge and how to acquire additional knowledge. The document requires here, you need to have knowledge management system and documented procedures and lesson learned. You need to keep the records of knowledge base and training on knowledge, and retention is ongoing or permanent. The evidence you need to present to the auditor here, including critical knowledge being identified, such as recipes, formulas, process parameters, and customer requirements, and knowledge documented, being documented and accessible, and knowledge being practiced from loss, being protected from loss, and new knowledge being acquired when needed. So those are the documents you need to present to the auditor to fulfill the requirement. For clause 7.2, you need it requires you to determine competence needed and ensure persons are competent, and you need to take actions to acquire competence. You need to evaluate effectiveness, and you need to retain documented information as evidence. The document requirements here, you need to have competent metrics and training plan. And the records you need to have, including training records, competence assessment, and qualifications. And you need to retain them for the duration of the employees plus 7 years. And this is a mandatory requirement. During the audit, you need to present the evidence, including competence requirements being defined for each role, education, training, experience requirements, and training being provided where gaps exist, and effectiveness of training being evaluated, and records of qualifications and training and experience. Those are the evidence to meet the requirements of clause 7.2, and also notes that every evidence we mention are the example of the requirements. So evidence are the example of what the requirement mean. And then we have clause 7.3, the requirement. It requires you to ensure persons are aware of quality policy, relevant objectives, their contributions, and implication of nonconformity. And the documents required here, you need to have awareness training materials as the documents. And the records, you need awareness training records and communication records. And you need to you need to retain them for 3 years. Example of those requirements that you can present as evidence, you need to have evidence of awareness training, and employees can explain the policy and objectives. That means you train them, and employees also understand their roles in QMS, which you can do through the induction, and awareness of consequences of nonconformity, which also you can have those information or awareness being given to them through toolbox talk, inductions, and also training on the policy and objectives. And then you have clause 7.4 requires you to determine internal and external communication relevant to QMS, including what you need to communicate, when you need to communicate it, with whom are you communicating uh, to the internal and external parties, and how are you communicating, and who is leading the communication, because you have many ways of communication and many communication through different people. And the documents you need here, you need communication plan or communication metrics to be documented, and you need to keep the communication records and retain them for 3 years. Example of those requirements, which you can present also as evidence, you need communication needs being identified and methods being defined, such as meetings, emails, boards, and internet entrance, and responsibilities being assigned, and evidence of communication that communication happened. Those are the examples and also the requirements that you can present to the auditor to fulfill the requirement of clause 7.4. And then when we move to clause 7.5.1, it requires you that your QMS must include documented information required by standard and determine the necessary for effectiveness. The documents you need here, you need a document register and QMS manual. QMS manual is optional at this point, but you need the document control records, and you need to retain those records for 3 years. The example of the requirement, which you can present also as an evidence, you have all mandatory documented information must be presented, and additional documents as needed for the effectiveness. For clause 7.5.2, it requires you to have control. Documented information must be available, suitable, and protected. And the document you need here, you need document control procedure, which is a mandatory requirement. And you need document approval, review, and update records. And those records are mandatory, and you need to retain them for 3 years. And the example of those requirements which you can present as evidence for the auditor, including documents approved before the use, and documents are reviewed and updated, and current versions are identified, and obsolete documents are removed or identified. Those are the examples of what the requirements say, and also you can give them as the evidence to the auditor. Then when we move to class 7.5.3, it requires you to have control documented information through distribution, access, retrieval, usage, preservation, change control, and retention period for the documented information. And the documents you need here, you need records, control procedure, the control procedure for the record, and you need record retention logs, and disposal records, and the retention here as per the retention schedule, and the examples of the requirement which you can present also as evidence. You need records must be legible, identifiable, and retrievable, and the records must be protected from deterioration, and the retention periods must be defined, and disposal must be controlled. We are continuing with the checklist, ISO 9001, 2015 complete class checklist. Now we move to class 8, operation, which is the heart of the standard. So we start with class 8.1. It requires you plan, implement, and control processes needed to meet product or service requirements by determining the requirements, establishing criteria, implement controls, and retrain the documented information. The document required here, you need to have operational planning documents and process control plans. And you need to have planning records and process information data and retain them for 3 years. Example of those requirements that you can present as audit evidence. First, you have requirements for product or service must be determined, and the process criteria and control must be established, and the resources must be determined and provided, and the processes must be implemented per plans and evidence of control. Those are the examples that you can present to the auditor as evidence. And then you have in clause 8.2.1, it requires you to communicate with customers regarding product or service information, inquiries, contracts or orders, and customer feedback, and customer property, and contingency actions. The required records here, you need to have customer communication procedure, and you need to have communication records and order acknowledgements, and retain those records for 3 years. Example of those requirements that you can present as evidence for the auditor, including product information provided to customer, contracts or orders are handled systematically, and customer feedbacks mechanism exists, and customer property are controlled, and contingency plans for emergencies. And then in the clause 8.2.2, it requires you to determine requirements for products or services, include customer requirements, must be stated and implied and stated statutory and regulatory and organizations requirements. The document you need here, you need customer requirement review procedure. And with it, you need requirement review records and retain them for the life of the products plus 3 years. Example of those requirements that you can present as an evidence for the audit, including customer specification being reviewed, regulatory requirements being identified, organizations requirements being defined, and ability to meet requirements being confirmed. In clause 8.2.3, it requires you to review requirements before committing to supply. That means customer requirements being defined and contracts and orders differences being resolved and ability to meet requirements being confirmed and retain documented information on review results and new requirements. That means you need to have the required document here. You need to have contract review records, contract review records. This is mandatory requirements. Along with it, you need to have contract review records and uh, retain it for the life of the contract plus 3 years, which is a mandatory requirements. Example of those requirements that you can present as audit evidence, including all orders and contracts being reviewed before acceptance, differences from previous agreements being resolved, capabilities to meet requirements being confirmed, and records show review and approval, the records that are showing you review and you approved. Those are the example of the requirements, and you can present them for audit evidence. For clause 8.2.4, it requires you to control change to the requirements for product or services and ensure relevant documented information are amended and relevant persons are aware. So the document required from you here is a change control record. And along with it, you have to have change notifications and updated documents, and you retain them for 3 years. Example of those requirements that you need to present to the auditors as evidence include change requirements controls, documented updates when documents updated, when requirements change, and affected personnel being informed of the change. And we continue with the checklist of ISO 9001 2015, Clause 8, Operations Part 2, requirement. In ISO 9001 Clause 8.3.1 and to Clause 8.3.6, it requires you to design and develop, if available, if it's applicable to you, this part, and mainly is excluded. It requires you to design and develop planning, is for the design and development, which means you need to document the planning, the inputs, and the controls, and the outputs, and the change. And the document you need to have here, you need to have design control procedure and design plan. And the records retention, you need to keep the design records and validation or verifications records and retain them for the life of the product plus 7 years. The auditors, the audit evidence you need to present here, you need to present proof or evidence of design stage being defined and design inputs and output being documented and design reviews being conducted and design verification and validation being performed and design change being controlled. And note here, often this is excluded, as we say, in food manufacturing when products made to customer specification. And then when we move to clause 8.4.1, it requires you to determine control for external providers based on their ability to provide conforming processes and products and services. The document required here, you need to have supplier approval procedure and approved supplier list. And along with it, you need to have supplier evaluation records and retain those records for the duration of the supplier plus 3 years. The evidence you need to present to the auditor, which are the example of the requirements, include criteria for supplier selection being defined, supplier evaluation before approval, and risk-based approach to supplier control, and type and extent of control being defined. Then we have clause 8.4.2. It requires you to ensure externally provided processes, products, or services conform to the requirements by determining the requirements, defining controls, and communicating requirements. And the document you need to have here is purchase specifications and purchase orders. Along with it, you need to have records of purchase orders and supplier communications and retain them for 3 years. The evidence that you need to present to the auditor, which are the examples of the requirements, including purchase specifications being defined, requirements being communicated to suppliers, acceptance criteria being specified, and competence requirements for suppliers being defined. And then we move to clause 8.4.3. It requires you to establish and implement inspection and verification activities to ensure externally provided products or services meet the requirements. So the documents you need to have here, you need to have receiving inspection procedure. And along with inspection procedure, you need to have records of inspection, receiving inspection, and retain them for 3 years. Example of those requirements that you can use on audit evidence, including incoming materials inspection records, inspection criteria being defined, and non-conformity material being identified, and supplier performance being monitored. And then finally in clause 8.5.1, it requires you to control production and service provision. That means the availability of documented information and availability of monitoring or measurement resources, and implementation of monitoring or measurement, and use of suitable infrastructure or environment, and appointment of competent persons, and validation of processes, and implementation of release or delivery or post-delivery activities. The document you need to have here is a product procedure and also work instructions. The records you need to have with those procedures and instructions, including production records, batch records, and you retain them for the shelf life of the product plus 6 months at the minimum. Example of those requirements that you can use also as evidence, including work instructions to be available at workstations, production to be controlled for the procedures, monitoring equipments to be available and calibrated, and competent operators to be assigned, and production records must be complete. Those are the example of the requirements that also you can use as evidence. And we continue with ISO 9001 2015 complete clause checklist. Now we are in clause 8, operations part 3. Clause 8.5.2 requires you to identify requires the identifications and traceability, which means you need to use suitable means to identify outputs and identify a status of outputs with respect to monitoring and measurement, and control unique identification where traceability is requirement, and retain documented information for traceability. The document you need to have here, you need to have traceability procedure, and you need to have batch coding system. Records and retention to have along with those documents, you need traceability records and batch records, and you need to retain them for the shelf life of the product plus 1 year minimum, which is a mandatory requirement. Example of those requirements that you can present as audit evidence, including product being identified throughout the production and batch codes being assigned and traceability from raw material to finished products and an inspection or test status being identified and traceability records being retained. And then in clause 8.5.3, it requires you to control property belonging to customers or external providers while under organization's control. You need to identify, verify, protect, and safeguard those properties and report any damage or any loss or any unsuitability. The document you need to have here, you need customer property control procedures, and the records you need to have along with those procedures are customer property records and the retention, the duration of the customer plus 3 years. Example of those requirements that you can use as evidence includes customer properties being identified and conditions being verified on receipt, and protected, those properties being protected during the use or the storage, and the damage or loss being reported to the customer. Then you have in clause 8.5.4, it requires you to preserve outputs during production and service provision to ensure conformity to requirements. The documents you need to have here, you need to have preservation procedure and a storage requirement. And also you need to have a storage condition monitoring records and retain them for 3 years. Here also you can use those examples of the requirements as evidence for the audits, including storage conditions being defined with temperature and humidity and segregation, and handling methods being defined, and packaging requirements being specified, and FIFO, first in, first out, or first expired, first out, being implemented, and monitoring of a storage condition. And in class 5.5, it requires you to implement arrangements for post-delivery activities, including warranty, contractual obligations, customer feedbacks, and maintenance. The documents you need to have here, you need post-delivery support procedure. Along with it, you need complaints records and warranty claim, and the retention period is 7 years. Example of those requirements that you can use as evidence for the audit, including post-delivery requirements being identified, customer feedback systems, complaints handling process, and warranty obligation being met. Then in clause 8.5.6, it requires you to have to control the change production, to have control change to production or service provision, to review or authorize change, and to retain documented information on change results, and also persons authorizing and actions from review. The document required here is control change control procedure, and along with it, you need to keep change control records and retain them for 3 years. And the example of those requirements that you need to use as audit evidence, including production changes being controlled, change being reviewed before implementation, and impacts being assessed, and approval being documented, and verification of change effectiveness. When we have in clause 8.6, it requires you to ensure the release of the products or services only when plant arrangement satisfactorily completed unless approved by relevant authority and customers. That means don't release without meeting the specifications unless it's authorized being safe by customer or by the authority. And here you need to have release procedure as a required document and release criteria. And along with it, you need to keep release records and certifications of analysis and retain them for the shelf life of the product plus 1 year. And this is a mandatory requirement. Along with it, those requirements, example of those requirements, you can use them also audit um, as audit evidence, including the release criteria being defined and all checks being completed before release, and release authority being defined and records showing conformity being verified, and traceability, the person who authorizing the release. In clause 8.7, it requires control non-conforming outputs by identifying or control to prevent unintended use or delivery and take appropriate actions and verify conformity after corrections and retain documented information on nonconformity and actions or concessions or authority. With these requirements, you need to have nonconformity product control procedures, and this is a required document or documented information. Along with it, you need to have nonconformity records, and disposition records and retention is 3 years mandatory as well. The requirement examples are the same that you can use for audit evidence, include nonconformity product being identified and segregated, dispositions being uh, decided for rework or scrap or concession or return, and authority for disposition being defined, and corrective actions being taken, and verification after corrections, and customers being informed if product has already been delivered. Now let's take a look at clause 9. We are continuing with the complete clause checklist now with of ISO 9001 2015, and now we are in clause 9, the performance evaluation, and clause 10 also improvement. Starting with clause 9.1.1, it requires you to determine what needs monitoring or measurement, with methods, and when to perform, and when to analyze or evaluate, and to retain documented information as evidence. The document required here, you need to have monitoring and measurement plan and KPI dashboard. And the records, you need to have along with them monitoring record and performance, data, and the retention period is 3 years. And the example of those requirements that you can use as audit evidence, including KPIs being defined for processes and QMS, monitoring methods being specified, analysis being performed, and results being evaluated. And then you have clause 9.1.2. It requires you to determine methods for monitoring and measuring customer satisfaction and obtain or analyze or evaluate the information. The documents required here, you need to have customer satisfaction procedure. Along with it, you need to have customer satisfaction survey and complaint analysis and retain them for 3 years. Example of those requirements that you can use as evidence, including customer satisfaction being measured, methods being defined, either surveys or complaints or feedbacks or all together, and data being analyzed and trends being identified. And then in clause 9.1.3, it requires you to analyze and evaluate data or information from monitoring or from measurement. The required document here, you need to have analysis report and trend analysis. Along with them, you need to have analysis records and retain them for 3 years. Example of those requirements that you can use for audits as evidence, including data being analyzed for trends and conformity of products or services, and customer satisfaction levels, and process information, and supplier performance and effectiveness of actions being taken. Then in clause 9.2, it requires you to conduct internal audits at planned intervals. You need plan, establish, implement, and maintain audit program and define criteria, scope, frequency, and methods, and ensure objectivity and impartiality, and report results to management, and take corrective and preventive actions or corrections and corrective actions, and re- retains the documented information. What you need here actually is internal audit procedure, which is mandatory documented information required, and audit program. Along with it, you need to keep audit plans, audit reports, and corrective actions, and you retain for 3 years, which is a mandatory requirement. Those requirements that you need to present as evidence for the audit are audit schedule covering all the processes annually, and auditor competent and impartial, and audit criteria being defined, and non-conformities being identified, and corrective actions that has been taken, and management being informed of the results. In clause 9.3, it requires top management reviews of QMS at planned intervals to ensure continuing suitability, adequacy, and effectiveness, and alignment with the strategic direction. The inputs from those reviews should include previous actions and change and performance and effectiveness and adequacy of resources and effectiveness of risk actions and improvement opportunities. The outputs should include improvement opportunities, QMS change, resources needs, and we need to retain the documented information. The documents you need to have here is management review procedure, along with management review records, and retain them for 3 years, which is a mandatory requirement. Example of those requirements that you can present as audit examples, including review being conducted at planned intervals, minimum you can do it annually, and all required inputs being considered, and decisions and actions being documented, and resources being allocated, and improvement opportunities being identified. Then we move to clause 10. Clause 10.1 requires you to determine and select improvement opportunities, implement actions to meet customer requirements, and enhance satisfaction. The document required here, you need to have improvement plan and suggestion schemes. Along with those documents, you need to have improvement records and retain them for 3 years. Example of those requirements that also you can present as audit evidence to fulfill the clause requirements include improvement opportunities being identified, actions being planned and implemented, customer requirements being met, and customer satisfaction being enhanced. In clause 10.2, it requires that when nonconformity occurs, you need to react or take actions and evaluate need for action to eliminate causes and implement actions needed and review effectiveness, then update risk and opportunities and make changes to QMS and retain documented information on nature of nonconformities and actions taken and results of corrective actions. The required document here, you need to have corrective action procedure, which is a mandatory documented information, mandatory requirements. Along with corrective action procedure, you need to have corrective action records and retain them for 3 years, also mandatory requirement. Example of those requirements that you can use and audit evidence, including nonconformity being identified and documented, root cause analysis being performed, corrective actions being implemented, effectiveness being verified, and similar nonconformities being prevented, and QMS being updated if needed. Then in clause 10, it requires you to continually improve suitability, adequacy, and effectiveness of QMS. The documents you need to have here, you need to have continual improvement initiatives. Along with these initiatives, you need to have improvement project records and retain them for 3 years. The example of those requirements that you can also use uh, as audit evidence, you need to have improvement culture being demonstrated, analysis results being used for improvement, innovation being encouraged, and process improvement being implemented. All right. Those are the requirements of ISO 9001. Now let's have a summary, a look at the summary of the mandatory documented information of ISO 9001 2015. This is a complete list of mandatory documents and records. In ISO 9001 2015, the mandatory documented informations, the documents are like 12. So you have QMS scope as per clause 4.3. You need to have quality policy as per clause 5.2.1. You need to have quality objectives as per clause 6.2.1. You need to have document control procedures as per clause 7.5.2. You need to have competence records as per clause 7.2, and the evidence of education and training and skill and experience. You need to have monitoring and measurement equipment controls as per clause 7.1.5. You need to have contracts or order review records as per clause 8.2.3. You need to have design and development records as per clause 8.3 if this is applicable in your organization. And you need to have traceability records as per clause 8.5.2. And you need to have product release records as per clause 8.6. And you have to have non-conformity or not conforming product control procedure as per clause 8.7. And you need to have non-conformity and corrective actions records as per clause 8.7 and 10.2. And you need to have internal audit programs and results as per clause 9.2. And you need to have management review records as per clause 9.3. Those are the mandatory documented information documents, right? These are the documents that are required, mandatory documents. And the typical retention period for manufacturing, the scope, QMS scope, you need to retain it for this life of the certification. That's the retention period. For the policies and objectives, you need also to retain them for the life of the certification. For procedures, you need to maintain the current version versus 3 years after superseded. And the training records you need to maintain during the duration of the employees plus 7 years, or during the duration of the employment plus 7 years. For calibration records, you need to maintain them or to retain them for the life of the equipment plus 3 years. And for the production or batch records, you need to retain those records for the shelf life of the product plus 6 to 12 months at the minimum. For traceability records, you need to maintain those records for the shelf life of the product plus 1 year at the minimum. For customer complaints, you need to maintain them for 7 years. For audit records, you need to retain them for 3 years at the minimum. And for the management review, you need to retain them for 3 years at the minimum. For corrective actions, you need to retain them for 3 years at the minimum. And for the supplier record, you need to retain them for the duration of the relationship with the supplier plus 3 years. So this is complete list of the mandatory documents and records for ISO 9001, 2015. All right, this is the summary. Also, you need to know that the retention period may be extended based on customer requirements or regulatory requirement or product liability consideration. So always retain records longer than minimum when you are in doubt, and also always check with your regulatory requirements. All right. Now let's look at the common audit findings and how to avoid them. Learning from the most frequent nonconformity in food manufacturing audits, these are the top 10 ISO 9001 2015 findings that you can avoid: having incomplete or missing training records, calibration certificates being expired or missing, corrective actions not addressing root causes, management review missing required inputs, internal audits not covering all the processes, document controls being absolute or using absolute documents, and customer complaints not properly being investigated, and traceability gaps in production records, and monitoring and measurement data not analyzed, and objectives not smart or not being monitored. Those are the top 10 findings in ISO 9001 2015. For the top 10 findings in ISO 22000 or FSSC 22000 version 6 findings, which we will cover later, but just keep those findings in mind so that you can avoid them. The first finding is has a plan not validated before implementation, CCP monitoring records incomplete or unsigned, traceability tests not conducted or exceeds 4 hours, allergen cleaning validation not performed, environmental monitoring program inadequate, supplier approval lacking risk assessment, TASAP or VASAP not reviewed annually, and food safety culture not demonstrated, and prerequisite programs not verified, and corrective actions for CCP deviations inadequate. Those are the top 10 ISO 22000, 2018, FSSC 22000 version 6 findings that you need to avoid. The prevention strategies of those findings: first, you need to maintain complete records, ensure all records are completed in real time and are signed by responsible persons and retained per the requirements. And you need to conduct weekly records review to ensure that. Second strategy, you need to validate before implement. All control measures, cleaning procedures, and critical limits must be validated with scientific evidence before implementation. Third strategy, you need to close the loop. Every corrective actions must include root cause analysis, effectiveness verification, and system updates to prevent recurrence. The fourth strategy, you need to train and verify. Training is not complete until competence is verified. Test understanding, observe performance, and document verification. These are the strategies. If you follow them, you will avoid those top 10 findings in those standards. Now let's move to ISO 45001 2018, Occupational Health and Safety. And this is going to be a complete implementation guide as well.